So, if you're thinking about making a campaign or you're formulating it, about ready to go, but you're just doing those finishing touches, final polishes, you may be wondering, when do I start? Right? When should I launch? This is something that takes a little bit of time, but if you do it, it can make a world of difference in terms of what kind of engagement you get, what kind of results. A good example, I can post at, this is kind of like a micro example, I guess. I can post at midnight, or I can post at 10 a.m. For a general post, that 10 a.m. one's going to do better. You can extrapolate that to the whole year, right? But that's what I'm going to be covering on today's episode of the BB&J podcast. I'm your host, as always, or almost always, John Lind. Let's get started, okay? So, what are we talking about? What do I mean when I say a campaign? You can consider a campaign just, running new ads, launching a new product, opening a new store, offering new services. Like, these are all excellent reasons to launch a campaign. If you're trying to promote something, if you're trying to enhance something or reach out to a new audience, these are all things that can kind of fall into the category of a campaign. So, why does timing even matter? Why does it even bother? Why do you even need to bother with it? Timing matters, and there's easy ways to see how that shakes out, right? If I have a Christmas store or a Halloween store, Halloween store, they always pop up for Halloween. If that opens in July, it's going to make a lot less than one that opens in, September. If you are launching a back-to-school campaign, you should probably launch that around the time it's back to school, right? Timing matters with a campaign. If you time it properly, you're going to reliably and predictably see better results in terms of whatever you're trying to get out of it. It's something that you should take seriously because it gets serious results. Okay? These campaigns people are launching them all the time, all over the place for all sorts of things. And they are doing these timing things. They are being considerate of what the timing is looking like and, is this the best time to start this campaign? Will this get us the best results if we do it right now? And you should be too. Your product, your service, whatever it is you're launching, it's worth it. It's worth the due diligence because that due diligence is going to get the results. Not trying to say you have to pause your campaign until you figure out the exact right minute and second to figure it out. If the right time to do the campaigns right now, then the right time to do campaigns right now. But don't rush into something because of ignorance. There's this kind of this rule that you see unofficially, but it really does it really does lend itself to pretty much any field. You learn the rules so that if you break them, you do it in a way that still makes sense. That's why a lot of artists get professional training. That's why writers get professional training, because you need to learn what you're supposed to do. And then so that if you do something outside of that, you do it knowing that you have a good reason that is going to get you results. So let's talk about the standard, right? Let's talk about the rule. and then let's go over why to break them, you know, for launching a campaign. So, all in all, the best time to start a campaign is at the beginning of a quarter. People tend to do new things during the beginning of a quarter. They kind of take stock of what happened over the last quarter, what happened over the last year, whatever it is, and they see, oh, maybe I need to change things. Maybe I do need this product now. Maybe I do need this service now. So if you're not sure when to start your campaign, do it at the beginning of a quarter. That kind of mindfulness, that little rule of thumb is an excellent starting off point. Throw in a million disclaimers in, because I don't want anyone coming to me being like, John, I started at the beginning of the quarter and I didn't get results. Hold up a second. There are times where it doesn't make sense to start a campaign at the beginning of a quarter. However, if you're not certain when to start a campaign, if there's not like a hard date that it's strongly affixed to, you're usually safe doing it at the beginning of a quarter. It really is that simple. So we are quarter should be fairly obvious. Year's 12, I guess 12 months. For those of you listening, I just pieced together, I suppose, 12 on my fingers, my hands, or as the Babylonians would do it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You have, each quarter is 3 months, right? So 4 quarters in a year, everyone's 3 months apart. That's a pretty short gap, all things considered. January, February, March, and then April, May, June. We're nearing the end of Q2. So if you want to do launch a new campaign soon, starting at Q3 ain't bad. To third quarter, for those of you unfamiliar. So if you want to start a campaign right now, I would say the general best bet in terms of launch date is at the start of Q3. So if you're holding off a little bit, guess what? You have 3 months. Q4 is right around the corner. And then if it's a 6-month thing, you wait for the next Q1, and then Q2. It's 3-month increments. That's a pretty reasonable amount of time to space this stuff out. It's pretty much reasonable block to work with. So starting it at the beginning of the quarter is overall good, going back to the main point, because people usually start things at the beginning of a quarter. They look at their stuff, they look at where they're at. If they're unsatisfied, then they start looking out for stuff. I can promise you this. I cannot count the amount of times that someone who we had kind of been talking to in the past turn around and were like, oh, it's the start of the quarter, I'm not getting the results I'm wanting, let me actually reach out to them. This is a thing. People do this. Little side note, you should probably be reviewing at the end of each quarter, seeing where I'm at. Have I met my quarterly goals? Setting quarterly goals for the next quarter. All that goodness, right? And I think I'm going to get into that a little bit more next week's podcast. So watch out, I suppose. Watch out for that. I love these like little number things. That's just always been a little, I guess you could say, heuristic enjoyment of mine. Taking all this stuff and then doing fun things with it. But kind of getting back into campaign launch dates, what did I say? What did I say that I would follow up with? If you know the rules, then you can break them mindfully for a good reason. So the general rule of thumb is start a campaign at the beginning of a quarter. Or end of the quarter, which is basically the same thing as the beginning of the next quarter, right? Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you start a campaign at the beginning of a quarter? Well, if it's a situation where there is a hard date associated with your campaign, so if it's related to a holiday, if it's related to a specific time of year, a specific event or series of events, then you want to base it around that, right? Then you want to have that time frame, especially if it's an annual event, it's going to have its own time frame. So if you're doing a campaign that is on its own time frame, that's on its own hard set time frame, that is a good time to adjust for those specific dates. If you're, like I said, if you're doing something for Halloween, if you're doing something for Christmas, you're not basing it off of the general quarters. You're basing it off of the holidays. And the holiday season functions a little differently, right? The same is true for the sports season, right? If you're doing sports-related stuff, if you're doing, like hair-related stuff. If you're doing stuff for short hair, well, people tend to get their hair cut shorter in the summer. And so, like, you're still thinking about it in a cycle. When you're running these campaigns, you're still thinking about the cycle of these events, what you're basing it off of, what is causing people to engage with your campaign. Think about the cycle of that. The general cycle for most things is the 4 quarters, right? But if it's different, follow that. And I can guarantee you, if you do it mindfully and consistently, you're going to get results. You're going to get better results than if you just pick some arbitrary date. These things make a difference. So if you're not doing it based on the quarter, do it based if you're not starting a campaign based on a quarter, the beginning of a quarter, make sure that it's based on something. Make sure it's based on a specific cycle that is strong enough that it takes precedence over the general 4-quarter cycle. That's kind of my, I guess, closing piece of advice for you guys. As I said, I think this podcast has kind of gotten me a little inspired to talk about the quarters and all that goodness. I'll probably make a podcast kind of getting into that a little bit more. But for this week, that's all I have for you. I'd like to thank you so much for listening and or watching. This has been the BB&J podcast. I'm your host, John. Thanks for watching.